Good morning. Kan jeg stå lidt over her? Good morning. My name is Peter Eisenstein. I'm a board member of the political party Peace and Justice for Fred og Rettferdighet. I'm also a member of Jødiske Stemmer, a Norwegian Jewish anti-Zionist organization. I'd like to welcome everyone here, especially our European guests, to this all-day conference, No to War, No to Social War. We will have presentations and discussions on European cooperation and disarmament and social realities in Europe, with a focus on how scarce resources are being squandered on the military instead of being devoted to social improvement. These are heavy themes in a dark time of ever-increasing conflicts. It is not enough with the war in Ukraine. It is not enough with the war in Palestine. Western elites want us to defend our values in China by stripping away Taiwan, and in North Korea by countering the recent pact with Russia. All this on top of ongoing conflicts in the Caribbean, Latin America, and on the continent of Africa, all of which means that there is no place on earth where conflicts do not rage. As we know, American President Dwight D. Eisenhower coined the phrase the military-industrial complex. He warned, quote, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex." Eisenhower's farewell address continued a tradition of powerful men warning against the abuse of power. In 1836, John Quincy Adams defended Native Americans when he said, quote, "The present policy of the government towards the red man is marked with perfidy and stained with blood. It is a policy of extirpation justified only because we have the power and they the weakness." Adams' protest against the treatment of Native Americans is similar to Eisenhower's warning against the military-industrial complex, in that it came long after each man's enthusiastic participation in the very crimes they later denounced. We have seen this most recently in Jimmy Carter, a president known for his humanitarian achievements, but only after his time in office. As president, he did nothing but continue and intensify American imperial policies which sowed the seeds of conflict we saw in Afghanistan, Iran, and Central America. Other former American presidents need not be mentioned because most of them, such as Clinton, Obama, and Baby Bush, don't bother to even try to hide their hypocrisy. And this hypocrisy is not limited to the United States. Our own Jens Stoltenberg stands now as a glorious role model for other European leaders, such as Sanna Marin, Ulf Kristersson, Mark Rutte, who choose to enrich themselves through the art of nuclear warmongering, but at the cost of their own citizens' safety and well-being. But the truth in Eisenhower's warning lies not in the danger of the military-industrial complex, but in what he said just afterwards. He continued with his farewell address with, "Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals." An alert and knowledgeable citizenry. In other words, democracy means responsibility. The responsibility of each citizen to remain alert or well-informed, not only of the attempts to rewrite past crimes, but of current attempts at manipulation to allow these same crimes to be committed again and again. And that is where we find, I think, our weakest link in Western societies. It seems the more educated one is, the more well-read one is, the more up-to-date one is on current affairs, the more one supports government policies. And the position of all Western governments is to take our resources and pour them into the military-industrial complex. To do this, they search for enemies abroad as they try to convince us that we are in danger. But we know, those of us here in this room, we know that one can either understand history or we can trust the government. But we cannot do both. And I hope the knowledge and experiences that we share with each other today will strengthen our resolve in regaining control of our societies, our world, and our destiny. And with that, I'd like to introduce Marielle Leraand, who is the leader of the new Peace and Justice Party here in Norway. Marielle?
Dear comrades from France, Germany and Sweden, and dear all of you who has joined us on this occasion. Here we are going to discuss how we can bring down the perspective of weapons is the way to peace, the new slogan from NATO's General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. A slogan that especially in Norway and in Sweden stands without opposition in the parliament. In Norway, this is a historical shift. Before the Ukraine war, all the political parties were against sending weapons into any ongoing war. Now all the parties in parliament has voted yes to weapons to Ukraine. And therefore, we in Fred og Rettferdighet, Peace and Justice, stands as a conservative party. We want to uphold the idea that weapons into an ongoing war prolongs a war, and that if we want a peace agreement to be established, then that is also what we have to work for. More weapons is the path to continue an ongoing war, and negotiations and peace talks leads us to an end to this devastating war. Today there has been a total shift of normal logic in Norway. If you are against sending weapons to Ukraine and want our country to work for peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, you are suspicious. You get the stamp Putinist. To be a member of a peace party is even unheard of. So what do we do? As I see it, we have to do what we are doing here today. We have to challenge the narrative. And we have to do it in many ways. Concrete actions, as we see in the campaign in Sweden and Norway, against the American military bases is very important. We also have to challenge the notion of security, held up by an enormous investment in the military. People in Norway and in Sweden and France and in Germany are increasingly afraid. And a gigantic increase in the spending on so-called defense is seen as the answer. In Norway, we are near doubling our defense budget, up from 75 billion Norwegian kroner pre-Ukrainian war, up to, in 10 years from now, to 130 billion Norwegian kroner. That means 3% of the Norwegian GDP. And here's the thing. There's absolutely no debate about it. Nothing. Because all the parties in parliament support it. Even the so-called left parties, Socialist, Left Party and Red Party. Parties that have now left the left. They can no longer be considered left parties. They are, for all practical terms, cooperating with the forces that drives forth the imperialistic wars. These forces, which feeds themselves on the narrative on Russia as a continuous and increasing threat. That's why we saw no other way here in Norway than to establish a new political party, Fred og Rettferdighet, Peace and Justice in English. We want to align ourselves with a leftist, anti-imperialistic and anti-war tradition that says no to building armies of ordinary men and women put up for fight against comrades in neighboring or distant countries, fighting in wars that are in the interest of competing capitalist, imperialistic elites, that are not fighting for the people's interest, but for their own. So, comrades, welcome to this conference, as I see as another step further into building a European network to resist the capitalist elites and their destructive wars. Thank you so much.